Good evening. We continue to track the crisis at Arizona's southern border tonight. Thanks for joining us for 12 News at 6. I'm Mark Curtis.
And I'm Karima Devine. New tonight, Arizona lawmakers are moving forward with a proposed statewide vote on what would be one of the toughest immigration laws in the country.
12 News journalist Bram Resnick has more on the first public comments from supporters and opponents of the proposal that's being compared to the highly controversial SB 1070. Bram?
Yeah, Mark, the first Capitol hearing for the Secure the Border Act is now entering its fourth hour before a Senate committee. The bill would let Arizona voters decide in November whether law enforcement officers can arrest undocumented border crossers, a job done by the feds. Republican supporters say it's a response to one of voters' top concerns. For opponents, it raises the specter of SB 1070, a 2010 immigration law struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Senate President Warren Peterson wanted to make one thing clear about Republicans' Secure the Border Act.
There's no room in your story to spend for racial profiling.
Peterson cited Yavapai County Sheriff David Rhodes' statement that law enforcement officers would need evidence of an illegal border crossing before making an arrest.
Somebody said, oh, well, does that mean a police officer in Gilbert is going to ask you for your papers? No. That's not what that means.
Rhodes said Arizona's southern border counties would bear the brunt of arresting undocumented immigrants, but the bill doesn't limit enforcement, and no one could say how much that would cost.
How are we going to do these things? And there's not a lot of answers at the moment.
It's an unfunded proposal that the police departments will have to deal with in a situation where they're already short on money.
Attorney Daniel Ortega fought SB 1070, the so-called Show Your Papers law that energized a generation of Latino activists.
I'm not as emotional this time as I was 14 years ago, but I'm angrier because I thought we put that behind us.
In addition to giving Arizona police the power to enforce federal immigration laws, the ballot referral would mandate broader immigration checks for people seeking jobs or government benefits. Also, tougher sentences for fentanyl-related deaths. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs said in a statement, "This measure will divert law enforcement resources away from stopping crime, cost state and local governments millions of dollars, and leave a black eye on our state's international reputation." The Secure the Border Act is expected to be passed by the full Senate tomorrow and then head to the House for final passage next week. Mark Griebe?
All right, let's say it passes in November. How soon could we see sheriffs and police putting this in action?
So this gets really interesting. Could be a while, maybe even never. The Arizona measure is based on a Texas law that's hung up in the courts right now. A likely U.S. Supreme Court ruling would come next spring. If the Texas law is upheld, again, if, Arizona's measure would take effect late in the summer of 2025. If it's struck down, that measure on arresting folks at the border would not take effect. So it's a big question mark.
All right.
All right, Bram, thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks. Well, this Saturday marks 1 year since the end of Title 42. And since then, 12 News has been covering the border crisis from all angles. Tonight, we have crews in Yuma and Nogales talking to those impacted the most.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Rodriguez along our southern border. 12 News has crews covering the end of Title 42 1 year later. We are taking a look at what has happened along the border wall since then. We know that we saw gaps where hundreds of migrants were coming through. We're checking in to see the latest, if those have been filled. And I'm speaking with the head of Border Patrol agents here in the Yuma sector about what the numbers are really showing.
Look at what we're doing here, and they say, hey, your numbers are down. Well, they are down, but when you look at the lateral flow we're getting from other sectors to help them because we have the capacity and availability to do so, our numbers are actually still quite high.
From Yuma to Nogales, 12 News will have you covered all day Thursday.
I'm Joe Dana. 1 year ago, the Biden administration created 2 new tools to alleviate pressure at the border, one related to justice, the other mercy, at least for legitimate asylum seekers. So, what has changed now that those 2 tools have been in place? We'll take a look.
We're here in Nogales covering the journey of thousands of migrants who are seeking asylum since Title 42 has ended. I personally have spoken to a number of people from different countries, as well as investigating whether the flow of asylum seekers is putting a strain on the county.
And we, as a rural county, we do need help from the federal government.
We
need to fight for our dreams, and even though it's harder, we need to keep pressing forward.
On Thursday, we're dedicated to giving you the truth, from shelter space to help those in need to what's being done to help maintain order.
And be sure and stay with 12 News on TV and online as we continue to cover the border crisis. We'll have live team coverage all day tomorrow from the U.S.-Mexico border in Yuma and Nogales. Our coverage begins tomorrow morning on 12 News Today in AZ.